Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and in keeping with my promise, I'm going to do some demonstrations for the Ice Cream Fitness 2.0 Novice program. And here I'm going to demonstrate for you guys a conventional deadlift. Notice I said the deadlift in the video with no other qualifiers. For a lot of novice lifters, they might say, hey, what sort of deadlift is that? Well, since I didn't specify, that just means a conventional deadlift, right? That's the way lifts go. Unless someone names one of these weird variations, we just assume that. Now, is it to say that a person couldn't do sumo? You know what? I'm not even going to argue they couldn't do sumo, but I would rather you do conventional unless you have a good reason. I feel like you should build your base off conventional, even though I train both sumo and conventional personally. Now, as far as the grip goes here, I do want the novices to notice I am using what's called a hook grip. I have said before, I would like to see novice lifters learn to use the hook grip. I would absolutely like to see it. But if the hook grip is too painful for you, go ahead and do a mixed grip. I would actually say do a normal double overhand grip as long as you can until you get too strong to handle it, and then go to a mixed grip if you can't master the hook grip or you don't want to go through the learning process. But I'm going to tell you right now, learning the hook grip is a hell of a lot easier if you learn it as a novice. It's going to be a lot easier on you than if you get strong and then learn how to do it like I had to do. So the mixed grip, I've got an older clip here back when I used to do mixed grip. Yes, this is a work set with 515, no belt, to give some of the novice lifters an idea of what sort of weights I really do throw around and have historically. Mixed grip means you go over under, right? It means a supinated and a pronated hand. I'm going to recommend, if you want to avoid muscle imbalances, that you alternate on every rep. Don't do what I do here. I have a reason why I'm doing that. It has to do with an old injury. I can't underhand grip on my left hand. So I'm going to recommend that you alternate on every single rep. Now, what I want people to notice here is that I reset on every rep. Do you notice that I set the bar down to a complete stop for at least a second or two between every rep? I recommend you do that because this program calls for 5 rep sets. Now that's a limit set. That was a 5 rep max. You need to be very careful of that. That would be a case of you needing a weight reset. You saw me grinding on that. We would count that as form breakdown for purposes of this training. So let's talk about the basic setup. I want you guys to notice that I walk up to the bar, and you notice the bar is around my midfoot. You'll notice that my toes are slightly out, actually quite a bit out, and I have a relatively narrow stance. Why do I have a narrow stance? Gives the best leverages. Because if you notice my arms, when I grab the bar on the deadlift, they're 90 degrees from the floor. They are straight up and down. They're not flared out to the side. If you do a wider stance, you have to flare your arms wider. That makes the lift harder. That makes it more difficult because it shortens, it makes the range of motion longer, really. So you won't be able to lift as much weight. You're not going to have as good of leverages. And I mean, there's can be certain reasons why you might want to do that, but if we're just learning the basic deadlift, you don't want to do that. So if you take a really narrow stance, which is what you see a lot of really fat guys do because their belly is too big. A lot of power lifters do that because their belly is too big to get into the correct position. They also are not as strong as they should be pound for pound. Like usually the really fat guys who you see doing that, they really are weaker than you would expect even for their size oftentimes. They would actually be a lot stronger on the deadlift if they just lost the fat in their belly because the lift would be easier because they wouldn't have to do the wide stance and then the wide grip accordingly. So you want to take a stance to where your arms can clear your knees, right? They can be outside your knees without your arms going wider than 90 degrees, and that's going to be a relatively narrow stance. The other thing you're going to notice when I come up, you notice I get a good grip of the bar and I pull the slack out of the bar and then I pull my hips down into position. What I want you to notice, I start with the back rounded, but when I pull into position, you notice it's neutral in my lower back. There is no cat back. There's no rounding of the lower back. You pull your scapula back into scapular retraction. You keep your neck neutral. And I like to use the mental cue of pulling backwards when I deadlift. Now, it doesn't look like I'm pulling backwards, does it? But that's the mental cue I give myself. It's a good technique to use to keep the weight midfoot, because one of the things you're going to notice with the toes slightly out, that allows me to not have to swing the bar around my knees either. That's the other big deal with turning the toes out. Notice it gives me a straight line of pull. What I want you to notice, the master cue on your deadlift is, number one, when you come up, you pull the slack out of the bar. You notice there is no bend in my elbows at all when that bar comes off the floor. Why? Because I've given it a tug and I'm pulling the slack out. And notice I pull my hips down so that I ratchet up tight. Notice how I ratchet up super tight and then I break it off the floor. Right? So we pull all the slack out of the bar, because having slack in the bar will injure you. That's how one of the reasons you get injured. You pull the slack out on every single rep. You'll notice when I do the mixed grip set again later, the 5, that I reset my hips and ratchet myself down tight until my hamstrings pull taut and then break it off the floor. So I pull the slack out of the bar, watch the slack come out. As I pull it out, then the hips come down and then pull. What you're going to feel is the plates, you're going to hear the bar ding against the plates when you deadlift, when you pull the slack out. If you do that and then you drop your hips down till you're tight and you pull backwards, you're going to have usually pretty decent form. No matter what else is going on, whatever else is wrong, that's going to at least give you decent form. You're going to notice I pull the bar in a straight line. That bar stays directly above my midfoot all the way from the bottom until I lock it. So watch again closely with this heavier set, right? Watch what happens. That bar stays directly above my midfoot all the way until the lockout. Now, for the lockout, you notice that my shoulders come back. That is considered a complete rep on the deadlift. So even at a powerlifting meet, for example, they will fail the rep if your shoulders don't come back. The other thing you're going to notice is that there's no hitching at the top. It is one smooth, straight line. At no point do I allow the bar to rest against my thighs and then pull back after that. Right? We come up and lock it. One smooth motion. One smooth motion. If you have anything but a smooth motion like that, we're going to count it as a failure. So for purposes of the program, because you guys see how I wrote the program, go to the original video, which will be linked down below, and it'll be in the same playlist. We count that as a failed rep. So if you have any grinding, any up and down in the bar, or you have that bar rest against your thigh and then have to pull back and kind of, roll it up your thigh a little bit, all right? And that is not allowed. That's called hitching. That would actually be a failed lift at a powerlifting meet, for example. And it's also a bad habit to get in. We would count that as a missed rep. Right? But the thing you're going to notice, every time I pull, I reset, I pull the slack back out of the bar. And you need to do that on every rep. You don't ever bounce the bar. You don't do touch and go. I don't care what you've seen anyone else do. For purposes of this program, there's none of that allowed. I want to see a full reset of the rep. It rests on the floor. I want that bar on the floor for at least a full second. I want you to re-pull that slack out of the bar. You want to feel that bar pull up against the plates. You want to get your arms locked. You want to pull any slack out of your arms, and then you drop those hips into position, and then you break it off the floor while pulling backwards. Also, as far as breathing, you want a deep, deep breath. Right before you pull, like you guys are going to notice, you watch when I go to set it up, before I pull the slack out of the bar, I take a deep breath. You want full lungs before you pull. And then you can brace your abdomen, and then you can exhale when you start getting near the top, or you exhale, midway up, or that you can drive through. Now, again, you're going to notice this heavier set here, because again, this is my mixed grip one, but 515 for 5 reps. Again, notice me setting my feet into position. Now, I don't have quite the same stance I've been doing lately. I found that I get better leverages doing that. So actually, I would recommend you guys have your heels in closer than I do here. But again, you're going to notice on every rep, I reset, don't I? Right? My hips come back down. Drive, pull through. And you want to make sure that your lower back is neutral. You want your neck neutral. I'm not going to discuss thoracic rounding of the upper back. That's a more advanced technique. I am doing a little bit of that there. But for most of you, if you can pull your scapula back and try to keep your back relatively flat, it's probably better for the novice lifter, which is more of what you see me doing on those lighter sets. So what are the cues that we're looking for? We want the arms at 90 degrees, right? You want to pull the slack out of the bar. Have a deep breath, pull the slack out of the bar, drop the hips until you feel the hamstrings tight. Pull backwards and keep the bar midfoot. Lock it out clean at the top and then bring it back down. All right, this is how we perform a basic deadlift. It's a basic deadlift. And if you need to film yourself, go ahead and film yourself. If you need to have someone who knows how to perform the deadlift watch you, go ahead and do that. And there are a lot of good tutorials out there also, in addition to this little one I have here. But this just shows you the basics of what we want to see on a basic conventional deadlift. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.